One big decision was made there, obviously, in terms of the squad, with Jamie Heaslip announced as captain, continuing from his role in the autumn internationals when Brian O'Driscoll was out. So there was the option just to bring O'Driscoll back. What was this crassly handled by Kidney, and do you think it was a good decision?
I can't really get my head around this. I can sort of see both sides of the argument. It has to happen sooner or later. But personally, if I had been in charge, I think he deserves, and he's been our greatest ever rugby player. I think he deserves to have one more crack at the Six Nations as captain. And I think it possibly was a little disrespectful to him. But at the same time, I do realise that eventually it had to happen, and it does make sense to keep a squad turning over and give Jimmy the continuity that perhaps he deserves as well. So if I'd been in charge, I probably would have kept him on O'Driscoll on as captain, but it's not as bad a mistake as possibly other mistakes he's made anyway. So.
Okay, Pádraig, if I bring you in there and maybe just put something to you, you can tell me whether you agree or not. It would seem to me that at some stage this call will have to be made. A new captain, will be required, and Heaslip is an obvious candidate. He did it in the autumn, and he's a player who's fairly assured of his place in the squad, and is a top quality international. What I put you then, there is some merit in having him as a captain with O'Driscoll's experience to call on in the background, but that this should have been handled very differently, and maybe O'Driscoll should have been told a week or so earlier and given the chance to make his own announcement and come to terms with it in his own time. What would you think of that?
I think there is certainly an element of it not being handled perfectly, but then we don't know exactly what went on behind the scenes, and we're possibly reading too much into it. I'm sure O'Driscoll didn't find out at the team, announcement on the IRFU webpage. I'm sure he found out before then. And it's possible that we're reading too much of a comment here or a comment there. But it doesn't seem like it was handled perfectly, but it was the right decision. I think it would be a bit hypocritical to say on one hand, stalwarts of the Irish game like O'Gara need to move aside because they're not very good anymore. And at the same time, not ask yourself, is O'Driscoll still the best captain? And the key thing is he's played reasonably well this season actually when he's been fit, but when he's been fit is the key phrase there. There's no guarantee in my mind that he'll even play all 5 games. So do you really want to be changing back and forth captains during the Six Nations? On top of that, even if he does play all the games, Heaslip is to my mind at least, the obvious next in line for a captaincy. The other option is Best, who I wouldn't have had a problem with either, I might point out. But if we're going with Heaslip, we'll go with Heaslip. Better to have him there with O'Driscoll alongside him to help him into that role, because I don't think O'Driscoll will be here in the Six Nations a year from now. So he's admitted the role without having to, while he has O'Driscoll on his side to ask him questions, rather than throwing him in with no captain around, no one to help him. So I think now is the time to do it. So I don't really understand the kind of the furore about it. I think it was a perfectly logical kind of progression in my mind. But yeah, possibly could have be handled a bit better.
Okay, William, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have a very simple thought. Brian O'Driscoll's legs might go, but his ability as a captain is totally unimpaired. If he was a good captain in the World Cup and a good captain in the last Six Nations, then he's still a good captain now. I don't see the need to change it. Jamie Heaslip's a fine player, and I think as a bit of an honour to our greatest ever rugby player, it's a shameful bit of petty bureaucracy taking the captaincy away from him at all, because if this is to be his last hurrah for Ireland, then wouldn't it have been a wonderful and fitting tribute from the IRFU and from the coach, in inverted commas, to allow him to remain as captain, and for Brian perhaps to resign his captaincy at the end of the Six Nations, if that's his intention. I don't see the point. It's not, like the captain of a rugby team is like the captain of the Titanic. He doesn't have to make huge life-threatening decisions. He's to decide whether to go for a line-out or a penalty, or a scrum or a line-out. I don't get the whole point of it.
He can still have input into those decisions, though, and that's the benefit. He can impart his wisdom in a game.
Yeah, but that's not the point. I mean, Jimmy Heaslip can say to Brian on the pitch, like, Brian, why don't we do X, Y, and Z without being captain? I don't have any problem with if O'Driscoll had said to Kidney, like, I've had a good run at this, let somebody else take over, but apparently that's not what happened. And as Brian O'Driscoll is our greatest ever rugby player and greatest ever rugby captain, I think it's a terrible thing to have done. It's a bit of a slight on the guy. It really is. The guy's a nice man. He's never put a step wrong either in public or on the pitch. And to do that for no real gain, I mean, I just don't get it. Not against Jamie Heaslip. He's a fine player and would make a fine captain, in my opinion. But I just don't get the point of it.
Well, I mean, what I'll say, O'Driscoll has not had a long run of games this season, and I'd rather not see a position where, he ends up cropped for the France game, and we go into that with, a championship on the line, and we don't have any experience, proper experience of kind of captaincy in the Six Nations to kind of take over the ship. I think it's better to do it now. I don't see it as a slight on them, I'll put it that way.
Well, my point is just what I said. The captaincy isn't the be all and end all. It's an honour, and to honour a player like O'Driscoll by taking the captaincy away from him and possibly his last 4 or 5 games for Ireland. And I agree. I see what you're saying about if someone gets injured, but that could happen in any game. If it was Paul O'Connell who was there, would he have given it to Paul? And Paul could go off injured. It's made a mountain out of a molehill. It's not the end of the world, but to me, it's just a stupid thing to do, and goes along with a long line of other stupid things that have been done by the Irish coaching setup. I think it's a pointless decision that's just got a lot of people's backs up.
Do you think that, given the fact that there is no real gain for it, there must be a reason deeper down? Do you think there's a chance Kidney is considering dropping him for the game?
Well, Brian did commit lese majesty after the New Zealand tour by suggesting that the Irish players didn't know what they were supposed to do. And that might have got up the coach's nose a wee bit there. If he drops him, who does he drop him for? Because irrespective of there you go. We've all seen how good Earls is as a 13. He's great going forward, but he's a bit of a revolving door in defence at times. I know his Munster fans will think, no, that's nonsense, but he's pretty good at times, but he does make these big blunders. You saw against Edinburgh, a couple of tries went through his channel. Not all down to him by any stretch of the imagination, but they wouldn't have got through Driscoll like that. So, the only other 13 worth the name is Darren Cave, and I can't see Kidney picking Cave over Earls or anybody over Earls.